G'day champions, hope you're all doing well. Today I've got 10 New Year's resolutions for Linux users coming at ya, and I realise I'm a little bit fashionably late to this one, but you know what they say about the main character showing up last. So for me personally, listen, my New Year's resolution is 3840 by 2160. I don't know about yours, but here on a serious note, I've got 10 ideas for you, 5 of which are kind of generic, and then at the end I'll share my personal 5 that I would be working on. So tip number 1 is set up a server. Now, before you go off and say, oh, well, I don't want to spend $1,000 on a Xeon and a couple of ECC sticks of memory, you don't really have to do that. You know, a server can be anything from a $20 Raspberry Pi Zero wireless all the way up to the aforementioned thousands of dollars worth Xeon machine with ECC memory sticks. It really doesn't have to be anything special. What I'm talking about here is not anything really professional grade. If you just want to have a play around with, you know, SSH logging into a machine, setting up some services, setting up a headless system, that is a system without a graphical environment, and just getting more comfortable with the command line, I feel like that's a great way to really improve your skills, get you more comfortable with the command line, get you more comfortable with setting up Linux servers and utilities and things like that. And plus, you can use it as a platform to launch your own tools, which I think is really cool. So the second one that I've got kind of springboards off that one a little bit, and you'll see what I mean. I'm talking about de-botnetting your life. So if you're a Linux user, you've clicked on this video, or maybe you're not and you're just curious, but the chances are if you're running Linux, you're not really interested in having botnet in your life. And that is to say, you know, Google services, Apple services like Dropbox, you know, the standard ones that are kind of a bit privacy murky, to put it lightly. So springboarding off the previous one, if you've set up a server, what you can actually do is start hosting your own things. And this could be anything from, you know, you host your own website, you host a video playing service, so you get off Netflix, you host your own videos and things like that using Jellyfin. You could go ahead and set up a music server with MPD. You've got MPD clients and things like that. You could set up a NAS. You could do all sorts of things. Just get yourself off those Google, Apple, Dropbox, Microsoft services that you really just don't want to be using. The next New Year's resolution I have for Linux users is to write a daemon. And this one's a little bit more interesting because you would be surprised how many people I know are Linux users and they've got all these custom scripts, they've got all these custom setups, they've riced the absolute hell out of their system, but they are scared to death of doing actual computer programming. So when I say write a daemon, I mean you can write a program. It doesn't have to be complex. You can do the simplest program. Just challenge yourself maybe to learn how to do a little bit of programming, and you can write a long-running background task that does something. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to make, you don't have to make System D. You can make something very simple, like some examples I could give off the top of my head. You might write a reminders program, for instance, and you can use notify send or libnotify to get it to push you desktop notifications. You just have that running in the background, checks the time every once in a while, checks if there's any events that you need to be reminded of, and then it sends you a notification with libnotify. You could write some kind of weather service or weather application that, you know, at the start of every day or at X interval, it'll query some web API, get some weather data for you, and push that as a notification. There are plenty of things you could do that are useful that you could write your own daemon for. It's a program, just runs in the background, does all kinds of stuff. You can get feet wet in programming, some very simple things, and then eventually, you know, you scale that up, you're writing some more complex stuff. You might even write some networked applications, you know, that speak to each other over a network. can get pretty crazy. But a lot of people are afraid of taking that first step, which is why I say maybe as a New Year's resolution, challenge yourself, learn a bit of programming, write some daemons, and hey, you could write one and put it on that server we just talked about. You know, there's plenty of things you could do with that. So that's number 3. Number 4, and let me cook for a bit before you laugh, alright? So I'm talking about installing Arch Linux manually. Okay, yeah, what a joke. But really, on a serious note, the reason I say this is because if you're sort of a entry to mid-level Linux user, installing Arch, all jokes aside, manually is probably one of the most helpful things you can do to kind of advance your skill set. And my reasoning for that is because when you install a pre-packaged distribution like Ubuntu, Fedora, OpenSUSE, that kind of deal, the distribution does all of the sort of Lego building blocks for you. They don't really let you tweak and change. Maybe in some settings menu on the installer you can select what desktop you want, but that's really it. You know, if you want to get in and change things like your audio server, you know, your window manager, things like this that are at a more core level to the operating system, they're not going to really let you do that in a meaningful, easy way. Installing something like Arch manually not only gives you clout, right? Like it's a joke, like, oh, I use Arch by the way. Yeah, man, it's so cool. But it teaches you how to fit a system together and what all the different components are that need to work together to create a fully functional system. You know, like you learn all sorts of things. You do research, you know, on the different audio servers you can use, like Pulse versus Pipewire. And then following on from that, you know, do you want to use Wireplumber or Pipewire Media Session? You can use all sorts of things. What desktop do I want to use? I can even use a different, like the Kwin window manager on different environments as well. Like, so you can mix and match all these different things. And it really does teach you a lot about systems architecture. And that's really where I think the benefit is. If you haven't installed an Arch system manually and you haven't learnt that, I think it's a really beneficial experience, not just for the supposed clout that you get from installing Arch. So I think that's a really worthwhile thing to at least look at. You don't even have to run it as your full system. I'm talking about the educational experience of fitting the Lego blocks together yourself, which is really where the value is, in my opinion. So you just do it in VirtualBox if you want. So my 5th sort of more generic tip is for these resolutions is to revitalize some old hardware with Linux. So a lot of hardware these days from the early 2010s, I'm talking 2011, 2012, 2013, it's still perfectly capable for most things. It's just that the operating systems and the programs that people typically run on them are not really that well optimized anymore. Windows 11 has all kinds of requirements like TPMs, you know, and the interface is more sluggish and heavy than it used to be. But Linux gives you so much choice. As I referenced in the previous section, you know, you can fit all kinds of things together. If your desktop environment is too bloated, GNOME, you can just easily swap it out for another one, like Plasma, for instance. Or even going beyond that, you know, you could use something like LXQT. You could even run a tiling window manager on there, be even lighter, you know, or you could turn it into a headless server and go all the way back to resolution number 1. So there's so much you can do with old hardware that people really don't realize just because of how limiting it seems with modern proprietary operating systems. There's still so much life in those old components that you can do so many things with for projects and things like that. It just needs the right software. So those were my top 5 generic resolutions. Let's get into some of my own personal ones. So these ones might be a little bit more on the niche targeted side, just purely because they're gaps in my own skill set and things that I want to learn, but I hope you get enjoyment out of them anyway. So my first resolution is to self-host and use a Git server. So I've used Git at my job, I've used Git in my studies, I use Git a little bit, but to be honest, I'm not, I would say, proficient I'm okay, I can get by, but I really want to get good at Git and really get into the habit of using it for my own personal projects often. Because previously, I had not been using any version control for my projects, and I would have all of these folders with, V00, V01, V02, with all, and I'd look at them with timestamps, like, oh, this one was on the 22nd of July, this one was on the 23rd of September. But I really want to get good at using Git and version control software and use it in my own personal projects. So on my own home server, I've set up a Git-T, which is a free and open source, nice sort of GitHub, GitLab equivalent replacement thing. It doesn't have all the fancy features that those have, obviously, because those are, proprietary and paid, but for my own personal uses, it gets the job done fantastic. And I've had a great time. You'd be surprised how comfy it is to have your own personal Git repo that, you could say, oh, just private it on GitHub, but it's not the same, because I know that nobody, especially not Microsoft, is taking my private code and training GitHub Copilot on it. So my second personal New Year's Linux resolution is kind of meta, and that's to make some more videos here on this YouTube channel. So it's almost been 2 years, which is pretty crazy. I had intended to do this sort of thing more often, but life gets in the way. You get busy, you do all sorts of other things, sometimes you just can't find the time. So one of my main resolutions personally is to really get back into it, because I really enjoy this kind of thing. I've tutored people academically in programming and Linux and things like that at my university, and I just love sharing information about things that I'm passionate about. And I really think that this YouTube channel could be a platform for that, even if it doesn't amount to anything. Just the experience of getting stuff out there, producing content, being comfortable speaking in cameras, I think really that's a good experience for me, and it'd boost my communication skills. So that's my second one. Make more videos on this YouTube channel, and if you enjoy them, all the better. So my third one is to clean up my scripts. So if you're anything like me, you have a very disorganized scripts folder, like bash scripts, shell scripts. I'm not talking about programs or daemons, I'm just talking about bash scripts. My bash alias is very long, and there are some double ups. My scripts folder has duplicates everywhere that do pretty much the exact same thing, just with a couple variables changed, because when I want to write a script, I just do it quick and dirty. I'm thinking in the moment, I've got this thing I want to get done, let me write something to get it done the fastest way possible so I can get back to the other stuff. But this year I really want to organize my scripts folder, maybe make them a little bit more solid, do some command line argument handling for them. So things like mounting remote folders over SSH. I don't have a separate one for each host. I've got one, and then it takes the command line argument and then mounts that folder, it would be a 5-minute fix. I just have so many scripts, and I just have never been bothered. You got better things to do, but my scripts folder has gotten really out of hand. So I'm going to look at fixing that. The next thing on my list is to try a tiling window manager. So I've been a Linux user for the better part of 5 years, full time. I'd used Linux many years ago. 2013 would have been my first experience with it, but full time I've been a Linux user for 5 years, and I have not tried a tiling window manager because I've been too scared. I'm so comfortable here on KDE Plasma. I'm so comfortable with all of these the mouse movements and dragging things, and even some of the tiling here I use, and I think it's great. But I've been too scared to jump into a tiling window manager, learn the shortcuts, mess with the configs, because it just seems to me like a big time investment. And I understand that if I actually took the time to learn this stuff properly, I'd probably get more efficient. But it's just breaking that initial gap. And funnily enough, you can kind of link that to using Linux itself, right? Like, if you're coming from Windows, jumping to Linux and learning all of these new things probably seems like a massive time investment, and even if you understand it'll be better in the long run, it's still pretty hard to get over that initial hurdle. I've done it with Linux, I've done it with Vim, now I just have to do it with tiling window managers. And my final, number 5, my final New Year's resolution, Linux themed TM for 2024, is to learn about kernel development. So I'm an embedded systems engineer. I do a lot of systems programming and network programming, but I'm really keen to look into driver development, kernel development, and how the operating system actually interacts with its hardware devices. That's something that I've been interested in for a very long time, ever since, 2011, when I was, installing Hackintosh systems and looking at all of the custom drivers people wrote, the kernel extensions, and then modding those in and doing all those injections and things like that. I've been very much interested in this, and my C skills are quite proficient at this point. So I think it'd be a great thing for me and my development and my career going forward if I learnt a little bit more about Linux kernel development, device trees, drivers, things like that. So that's really going to be a starting point for me in that this year. So those are mine. That's really it from me. It's good to be back. It's good to be making videos again. A little bit late to this one, but yeah, that's it from me. Make sure to share yours down below if you had anything different. Give it a comment. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks. Bye.